Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. A prom queen acquitted of murdering her child wants off probation.
Life is precious, and it should be protected, and it should be guarded in all respects.
With strong words from a judge at trial, how will he rule?
Plus, authorities are now investigating the death of a 15-year-old found dead in a sugarcane field as a homicide, and the shocking legal arguments as the battle over the 2020 election continues.
This is not a fraud case.
Plus, defense attorneys ask a jury not to execute a former pro baseball player convicted of a triple murder. Law and Crime Daily covers court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmire along with Terri Austin. An Ohio woman acquitted of murdering her newborn baby wants to be let off of probation early. Angenette Levy tells us why Skylar Richardson's attorney believes she's been punished enough.
Skylar Richardson was sentenced to 3 years probation for burying her baby in her backyard. She's been on supervision now for about 14 months, and during that time, her attorney says she's been compliant and even completed 2 semesters of college without any issues.
I would do anything and above that you ask, and I understand, and I just wanted to say how sorry I was.
That was the last time we saw Richardson at her sentencing in September 2019. Since then, her attorney says she's paid all fines, achieved a 4.0 GPA in college, and looked for another job, but hasn't been hired because she's on probation. She was acquitted of aggravated murder and manslaughter charges. Judge Donald Oda sentenced her for abuse of a corpse after she buried her newborn baby Annabelle in her parents' backyard. He'll decide whether Richardson's probation will end early.
I know in my heart that if you would have made different decisions in this case, Annabelle would be here today. And I know that might be difficult for you to hear. I think what often gets overlooked, Ms. Richardson, is just how precious life is. Your life, Annabelle's life.
Skylar Richardson will appear in court on Tuesday morning. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Angenette Levy.
Joining us is criminal defense attorney Linda Kenney Baden. Linda, thank you for joining us as always. The judge all but said that she got away with murder when he sentenced her to 3 years of probation. Was that proper for an impartial judge, and could it be a reason to reduce the probation?
Well, first, Brian, I wouldn't want to miss your first show here with my friend Terry, a co-host of the Law and Crime Daily. So let me just say that this judge is not going to let her off probation. He's going to say, in his mind, she's young. And look, by the way, you can't get a job. Maybe it's because you and your parents did other media after you were acquitted of the murder charges. He's going to keep her on probation, and he's going to let to see what happens. To let her off probation, probably she won't do anything, but remember, probation in many cases for a judge is punitive, not just rehabilitation.
Exactly. Terry, the defense is arguing that in the 14 months of probation, Richardson did 2 semesters of college, had a 4.0 GPA the last semester. She worked over 10 hours a week, and but for probation, probably would have got another job. Are these reasons a judge could cut her probation early?
Well, listen, I agree with Linda, but I do think the defense is making a good argument. Probation is to have, certain goals, rehabilitation of the defendant, protecting society. And here, there's no question that she is already rehabilitated. She's a model citizen, and she has also gotten these excellent exemplary grades. And she also is not a, threat to society. So these are good arguments. Whether the judge, in fact, reduces it is something to be seen. I think that the judge won't.
Terry, you've got an update on the attack on actor Rick Moranis. What are some of the details?
So the NYPD says they've arrested and charged a man for sucker punching the actor in broad daylight. Officers say Marquis Ventura is believed to be the suspect seen in the surveillance video. A man wearing an I Heart New York hoodie struck Moranis in the head with a closed fist and knocked him to the ground. The attack happened just before 7:30 in the morning on October 1st. Moranis, best known for his roles in Ghostbusters and Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. He was treated at a hospital but says he's fine and he's grateful for the well wishes.
A Louisiana sheriff is now investigating the tragic death of a 15-year-old boy as a homicide, more than a month after his body was found in a sugarcane field. Authorities say Kwewan Bobby Charles' body was discovered in the shallow waters in November 3rd. His mother reported him as missing 4 days earlier to the local police department. A lawyer representing the family is questioning why an Amber Alert hadn't been issued and why information hadn't been shared across agencies. Linda, initial reports from the local police department said the cause of death was, quote, likely a drowning, and the family's independent autopsy actually confirmed that as well. Now, both are still waiting for a toxicology report, but with no other conclusion as to the manner of death, whether it was an accident, homicide, or something else. What other information are we waiting for to figure out what exactly happened to young Charles?
Well, how about an investigation? I think there's two issues here. The family's complaining because there's no investigation, right? So you can have somebody ends up in water and drowns. Were they put there? Where he's a young kid? Was he pressed down into the water and drowned? We don't know that. The coroner did release a report that said there are no pre-death injuries found on the decedent's face at autopsy, and he said the lacerations were due to autopsy procedure. Which means what? They took out some kind of lesion on his face that he had there? If so, was it a medical lesion? Was it a lesion caused by what could have been a fist? We don't know. So that could be something else they're waiting for, Brian.
Linda, I'm glad you brought that up, because when you look at pictures of Kwewan Charles after he died, it shattered not only my heart, but so many others. It's hard not to remember the pictures of Emmett Bobo Till's face when he died. Do you think that connection between the mysterious death of these two young men could be part of the reason why so many are pushing for an investigation on top of the lack of an Amber Alert?
Well, the investigation comes first, but you have to be really careful when you look at pictures of somebody who has died, especially a young child, because sometimes what we see is not what the medical examiners or the forensic pathologists have seen. And sometimes the horrible pictures can be normal.
Exactly. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, we'll take you inside a courtroom where a judge grills lawyers for a lack of evidence in an election fraud case. And later on, a fake pizza delivery ends with the strangulation of a past lover. We'll take you through the case gavel to gavel when we return. Opening statements in the trial of an Ohio woman accused of murdering Army veteran Ashley Biggs in 2012 laid the groundwork for the trial. Prosecutors say Biggs and her ex-boyfriend Chad Cobb were in a custody battle over their daughter. At the time, Biggs was working as a pizza delivery driver. Prosecutors say Cobb and his then wife Erica Stefanko used Biggs' job to lure her to a closed business with a fake order. Then Cobb killed her. Cobb pled guilty and was sentenced to life without parole. He's agreed to testify against Stefanko with no plea deal. Prosecutors began the trial by showing the jury different locations in the case with the use of drone video. They saw the Domino's where the victim worked, the alleged crime scene, and the cornfield where the victim's body was found inside of her car.
Erica Stefanko made that phone call that lured Ashley Biggs to her death. Evidence and testimony will show. When she made that phone call, she used a fake name. It was approximately 11:42 at night. And she had Ashley come to a business that was closed. And not just come to that business, but come to the back door. That is what was instructed in the call for the delivery person, Ashley, to come to the back door. Once Ashley made that delivery, went to the area she was supposed to, that's when she was confronted by Chad Cobb. That is when the zip tie was placed. That is when she was beat. That is where she was thrown in her car.
The defense argued, and the victim and the ex were in a heated custody dispute over their 7-year-old daughter, and Chad Cobb had all of the motive to want Biggs dead.
2017. He's stewing in that prison. And now he's trying to get out from under full responsibility. Because he wants to drag somebody else down to his level. He wants to get out of prison early. He wants his sentence shortened. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the kind of person that you are going to try to evaluate. Someone that took the mother of his daughter, ambushed her, beat her, and strangled her. And you are going to determine how much truth is in his statement.
Linda, get this. Cop isn't getting a plea deal to testify, but 2 years after he was in prison for murder, Stefanko divorced him and married his good friend and boss, Christopher Stefanko. It wasn't until after the divorce that Cobb began to mention Erica Stefanko's involvement. How do you think the defense will use that fact in the case?
Well, obviously, they're going to say he's making it up. And if you saw him today, and Brian, I'm going to answer this part with a little bit of a mask on because the judge was wearing this mask today. She and I are like in simpatico here. Okay. This is my thing. All right. I'll take it off. Okay. But obviously he's sitting there and he's like passive aggressive. He was like, even talking to the judge, well, Judge, I just don't understand. He was jealous of the fact that she is on with her life and she married his best friend. And he was also probably hated her because she was in the military and she was strong. Ashley Biggs, the victim. And also remember, she also had a gay relationship. He is just sitting there. And quite frankly, he knows he wants to get a deal after he testifies, or else why would he be doing it, except for the fact he's a little bit crazy in the head.
Absolutely. Now, Terry, this whole case could hinge on the testimony of a 15-year-old girl testifying about an alleged fake pizza delivery call used to lure the victim to her death that she heard when she was 7 years old. That's more than half of her lifetime, and she is pretty young at the time. Do you see any challenges for the prosecution in proving the case with this young witness's testimony?
Oh, Brian, I think there will be lots of challenges. You know, it all boils down to the competency and the credibility. The competency is going to be whether or not she can provide reliable testimony here. And the credibility, obviously, if the jury is going to be able to think that her testimony is honest and accurate. And the fact that she was, 7 at the time, I think that's going to be difficult for the jury to understand that she can remember all of these years later and that it's credible.
Exactly. It's quite a long time for a 15-year-old. When we return here on Law and Crime Daily, we'll discuss death penalty arguments in the case of a pro baseball player accused of triple murder using his own bat. Plus, legal arguments in an election lawsuit with lawyers making interesting concessions. Trump campaign lawyers are taking their election disputes to the courts, but are making some shocking concessions. In Maricopa County, Arizona, these attorneys claimed massive fraud in the ballots, but when they conducted their own investigation, they reportedly only turned up, quote, obvious lies and spam. Law and Crime's Adam Klasfeld got a hold of the courtroom audio where Trump campaign lawyers argued their case. Take a listen.
I want to disclaim very clearly, like I did in the first, any allegations of fraud. This is not a fraud case. We are not alleging fraud in this lawsuit. We're not alleging that anyone is stealing the election, to use Mr. Lee's words. It's not our theory here. And this is a distinction that Attorney General Whitaker and I have discussed on many occasions. The allegation here is that in what appears to be a limited number of cases, there were good faith errors in operating the machine that should result in further review of certain ballots. It is not a fraud case. It's not the election case. This is compared to that, relatively boring that case of procedures being followed. And because the words we use here have no effects in the real world and the confidence in our public systems, I just want to be very clear on the record about what we're talking, what we're alleging, what we're.
Law and Crime senior investigative reporter Adam Klasfeld is joining me now. Adam, thanks again for joining us. Simple question to start us off. If the Trump campaign isn't arguing fraud, then what are we doing in court?
Well, a lot of legal observers are asking that very same question. They started. Now, the case that we just saw, that was the so-called Sharpiegate case, a wild, outlandish conspiracy theory that was debunked and claimed that Trump voters had been massively disenfranchised. What we're left with after that concession is a handful of possible errors in good faith. And that just doesn't carry the Trump campaign to overturning the will of Arizona voters. Case dismissed.
All right, help me out here, because even as a lawyer, I'm confused. You claim a harm occurred, you do your investigation, you find lies and spam, but you still argue your court and case. How'd that play out for them?
Well, there was a very embarrassing part of that hearing where they tried to put forward a stack of hundreds of affidavits, and they conceded that a number of these affidavits had false sworn statements. The ones they could not prove were false were the ones that they brought before the judge, and the judge basically said, proving that you cannot prove something is false does not make it reliable. He didn't let that in.
All right, so there are reports of law firms withdrawing from these election fraud cases before they even go to court. And many of these cases are in battleground states, are getting dismissed right out. So what's next for this case?
Well, it's funny that you ask. This morning, I was getting ready to cover a case in Wisconsin, and it was about to go to a hearing, and the case was mysteriously and suddenly withdrawn. It was about to go to court. They voluntarily dismissed it. Now, this was the case where they said evidence will be shortly forthcoming. It wasn't forthcoming. Tomorrow, there's supposed to be another case in another battleground state in Pennsylvania that, as we are speaking, is set to happen tomorrow. We'll see if it actually gets there. That is one of the cases where one of these major law firms, Porter Wright, withdrew from the case.
Adam, thank you very much for joining us and giving the insight to these legal cases around the country.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
When we come back, the defense makes its case for a former professional baseball player convicted of 3 murders. Will it be life in prison or the death penalty for Brandon Willie Martin? A former pro baseball player is facing a possible death sentence after a jury convicted him of triple homicide. Brandon Willie Martin was found guilty of slugging to death with a baseball bat, no less, his father, his uncle, and a security system installation man. His defense says he's mentally ill and should not be executed. The defendant's cousin said he noticed changes in Martin's behavior starting after he graduated high school.
Yeah, it was erratic behavior to where he would just spurt out different things and disrespectful things to, his parents that they know how he grew up. I've never seen that in him, so it just caught me by surprise, caught me off guard.
And when Brandon was around 19, you were still spending a lot of time with the Martin family?
Yes, sir. Besides maybe his appearance over time. His appearance got to just...
What was different?
Well, you could tell he wasn't sleeping, he wasn't eating. He's like he's losing his weight, his physique was changing. Wasn't shaving.
On cross, prosecutors asked about the defendant's reaction when he was awarded $800,000 as a baseball contract.
You were asked how would you define Brandon Martin? Your answer was, to me, Brandon Martin is an outgoing, spoiled brat. Correct?
That's what it says here. Yes.
And would you also define him as kind of like a mama's boy?
Correct.
All right. So once he signed the baseball contract, he began to be more disrespectful towards his parents.
Correct.
During the offseason, he didn't move back with Melody and Michael, correct?
No.
In fact, he rented a mansion in Yorba Linda.
Yes.
And you visited him in that mansion, did you not?
Once. Yeah.
Once. Will you describe that house?
Nice big home.
Do you know would you estimate the square feet?
Maybe over 5,000 square feet.
Terri, we've been following this case for some time now. What are your predictions for the sentencing phase as we see more and more testimony?
You know, it's hard to predict, but I think the defense did such an excellent job. They put on multiple witnesses to say that there was serious mental illness, bipolar disorder, there was schizophrenia, and in fact, you know, the brother testified, and there you saw the cousin testifying that Martin had some issues. So I think he will be spared the death sentence, and I think he'll probably get life.
Yeah. Linda, we're asking about life and death, but is it somewhat academic considering the governor put a moratorium on the death penalty? How does that play out?
Between the moratorium and between the appeals and everyone before him, he'll likely die of old age, even if he were to get the death penalty. That's simply the reality of the situation.
All right, Linda, thank you very much for that. Terri, I want to thank you as well. Thank you for joining us here. How about this, Linda? What if a new governor comes in? Could that change it all for us? Could the new governor put the death penalty back on the table?
Sure, the moratorium would be over. However, when was the last person to be executed? It just really hasn't happened. And he's at a young age. And believe me, it's again, most people die of old age on death row.
All right, so it appears like that might be the fate for Brandon Willie Martin as it comes down to this case where we're deciding guilt or innocence in the sentencing phase, whether or not he'll be put to death. Thank you very much for joining us here at the Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.